In my early 20s, I basically see family members suffering with like heart disease, diabetes, their health, especially my older uncles, that were, I just didn't want that to be my future. Okay. College was just, it was just like really about me. It was just taking care of my health, my own personal fitness. I wasn't a super competitive person. It was just, it was about, basically my own health. And so in my 20s, started playing with diets, played with vegetarian diet for a few years, 3 to 4 years. That didn't work out too well for me. Advocate for their own health, right? I'm not trying to be their doctor, but I'm going to help them communicate with their doctor and understand how to manage their own health on a level where they feel confident. Maybe we need eat a little bit more protein, animal protein, to stimulate muscle, because it is harder to digest. We don't digest as much of it. But I don't ever want to demonize a particular food group or macronutrient. Yeah, as I got older, I noticed that alcohol was impacting my sleep quite a bit. And so I started cutting back. Once was maybe I have something every 2 or 3 months. And then it became now to where maybe it's just a holiday thing,
What's up, everybody? This is Simon. On this episode of The Ideal Hour, I have Zane Griggs. He is someone that is going to coach you to be your best self, healthy self, past 40. He also has a book called Kicking Ass After 50 and a podcast of Healthy AF. Now, at first, I thought it was healthy as fuck. Then it's After 50 podcast. So,
that's right.
Which is pretty cool as well. You're an advocate of low carb living. We're going to talk about being a man past 40, what it means. Obviously, you look great. I mentioned that earlier. And a lot of people, I think, don't take their health seriously. I've seen a lot of my friends balloon. Just really doesn't look like they're on the incline of life, are more on a decline at the age of 40 plus. So thanks for coming on.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm happy to be here.
Great.
Yeah, this is my favorite subject.
Oh, good. That's the way. Well, listen, I'm past 40, so I'm starting to feel the pain, the aches. Getting up a little bit is harder than it was when you're in your 20s. Give me a little bit about how you got into fitness, why this became important to you.
Wow, that's going back a ways. So in my early 20s, I basically seen family members suffering with like heart disease, diabetes, their health, especially my older uncles, that were, I just didn't want that to be my future. Okay. Everybody's talking about being genetic, and I saw this happening in my three uncles all having these issues. But my dad wasn't. He was always taking care of himself, with diet, doing best we knew to do back in the 80s and 90s with diet and exercise. And he wasn't having the same issues his brothers were. And so I was determined in my 20s, like I'm going to figure out what causes metabolic disease. I'm going to avoid it because I wanted to avoid it personally. And I'd already started working out a lot in college, but it's just a big, beefy college kid, right? That typical kind of like, just want to look good, right? And
but then I started playing with diet. Jock in college or what?
Well, I was just kind of it was actually a new thing for me. I played a little sports, this little water polo in high school, but college was just, it was just like really about me. It was just taking care of my health, my own personal fitness. I wasn't a super competitive person. It was just, it was about, basically my own health. And so in my 20s, started playing with diets, played with vegetarian diet for a few years, 3 to 4 years. That didn't work out too well for me. And then realized my interest in fitness and health was something I wanted to do professionally. So I was always asking trainers a bunch of questions when I meet them. And so I just dove in and been working as a trainer since 98.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just, but I also realized that the standard, pretty quickly, the standard recommendations just don't work. They're not very effective. They're pretty flawed. And so it became a point of exploration of trial and error and looking for alternative sources of information and testing those myself throughout, the last, 27 years. I keep, trial and error is like a continual thing, just trying to not get too locked into a religion of certain strategies with either diet or exercise, but really try to keep learning and understanding nuance and when to apply these strategies for different people.
So let me ask you, what's this common misconception here with people that are turning 40? Like, what do you see as their biggest drawback from taking care of their most important asset, which is really themselves, at such a critical point? I think that's almost like the turning point around that age or so, is a turning point for like, which direction do you take in life? Are you going to be this fit guy at a certain age? Or gal, or are you going to be kind of, just out of shape? And I think it's not a good example to your children and so forth. So what is the biggest misconception here? Like, what are people kind of struggling with aging fitness?
There's a turning point there hormonally, where like sex hormones start to diminish, growth hormones start to diminish. So you can't get away with as much. And that's where the shift really happens, is there's a paradigm shift physiologically that most people either don't realize or don't want to acknowledge. And where they could go before in their 20s or 30s, maybe they could, hit a diet hard or over exercise for a while and see some changes. But in your 40s, you're going to weigh yourself out. You're going to be exhausted. You probably have more demands on yourself, whether it's career, family, just general stress. So you have a lot more stressors already in your lifestyle. You have diminishing hormones. And so your old methods, where you just kind of pounded yourself into shape, or just you did a lot of these quick, did things hard, dieted harder, worked out harder, those things aren't going to be as effective. And they're more likely to overtrain you or underfeed you, or you're going to have some bounce back, right? And so it's about getting smarter with your strategy, being a little more strategic and more disciplined. It's not about being harder. It's not about pounding yourself into shape. It's about it's the discipline, the strategy, which should come with age, which comes with in all the other areas. With our career, same thing, right? With living, we have to get smarter in order to keep moving forward. And so that's really what needs to happen with our age. We can't keep eating the way we did, in our 30s. We can't get away with the level of processed food, the alcohol, the lack of sleep, when we kind of push the envelope on not sleeping as well or sleeping as much. And we need to be more consistent with our fitness. We can't just play catch up. We probably need to be a little more slow, consistent, steady, with all of those habits.
Would you
order to really,
sorry to interrupt. Would you say like steady, consistent fitness goes above and beyond the typical 1 hour workout? Like maybe do you advise your clients get in there like at least 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, and kind of get that the blood flowing, so to speak? Or are your routines still, I remember when I was younger, I would be in the gym for an hour. Now, if I get into the gym for 15 minutes, it's a win, right? So, what's the difference there? What's your kind of strategy for someone to get back into it, let's say, or even prolong it?
Yeah, I don't think an hour is necessary. It might be someone goes through the trouble getting into the gym. They might want to spend that much time there doing things. I think a broader base of fitness is important rather than just doing one thing. And so I tell people, if you have 20 minutes and if it's whether you're at your home or your office or you can get to the gym, make use of that 20 minutes, because it's it's the consistency over time that really builds your impact, right? And if you feel like you've got to have an hour in there, you're probably going to skip it a few times because you just may not have the hour. You just feel rushed, or you don't have the energy for it. And so, short, if it's strength training, you can do quite a bit in 20 or 30 minutes of strength training. Then you can maybe squeeze in later in the day a good walk, or when you get settled down at home, and you've popped on the TV, it's afternoon, do some mobility work, do some stretching, move around on the floor a little bit, kind of loosen yourself up, help your body unwind. And I think those are major components of fitness where you have some strength training. We have some low level cardio where it's zone 1, zone 2. It could be walking uphill, could be something that's simple that builds your cardio base. And then some mobility work, especially as we get older. One thing that happens is, things are a little stiffer, things a little tighter. And we have to work at that to keep us loose so we don't turn into like sitting so much. We don't turn into the question mark walking around. Our hips don't get so tight. So I think a broader base, but it doesn't have to be this, marathon workout. It could be a bite here and a bite there, like little exercise snacks are really effective.
If someone's walking and you're advising a client for a walk, what's a good amount of time to walk to really kind of build up some of that stamina? Maybe it's uphill, maybe it's kind of every night and so forth. Because I personally noticed that if I don't walk for a while, you know what I mean? Like for a duration. And even though I do other exercises, all of a sudden I'll do a walk and then I'm like, God, I'm out of breath a little bit. It's like kind of weird. What do you recommend typically for someone over 40 that, should they walk 4 blocks a day, 6, gauge it, or like what's a good 15-minute walk? Like, what do you recommend?
Well, if you're getting up, so ideally the heart rate you're looking for is something between, so at the top end, it'd be 180 minus your age. That's the top end of your zone 2. But if you're within 40 points of that, let's say you're 40. And so 180 minus your age is 140, right? But if you're within somewhere, you get your heart rate up somewhere between 90, 100 to 140, you're in your zone 1, zone 2 at level. And if you can do that for, say, half an hour for, 5 days a week, I mean, the recommended amount, studies show a benefit at 2.5 hours a week of that level. So 2.5 hours a week can be accomplished in half an hour, right? 5 days a week. And so that would be tremendous. That would be very beneficial consistently. Are you going to break records? Are you going to be, ready to compete in a marathon? No, but those things aren't necessary. We're talking about optimizing your health to avoid disease and to keep moving forward in your career and with your family. You're training for life, right? And so it's enough to build the mitochondrial base, the cardio base. So half hour, 5 days a week is actually right on target.
It's pretty good. I'm looking at your Instagram here, and you were on Men's Fitness cover. Is that correct? This is
yes.
This is you. Okay, excellent.
Well, it's a couple years old. It's a couple years old.
But you look like
it.
David Hasselhoff in this photo. What's going on? Like in his prime kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like
I was 50. Let me see. I was 51 in that photo.
Okay. Yeah. Wow, that is incredible. Okay. That is incredible.
So, I mean, I don't. If you get your picture taken, I spent a little extra time the 6 weeks before making sure, I leaned out a little bit and I had a little bit more of the pump going on. Okay. So I definitely manipulate things. But I mean, I pretty much stay right around 11% body fat most of the time, 10, 11%. And that's me. I'm not saying everybody else needs to. I think there's a healthy range in there that is somewhat personal for some people. I don't think especially over 40, staying below 10% is really sustainable. I think for most people, majority of people, there may be a few rare aliens out there that are good there, but most people, they're either hungry at that level, they're tired, it's maybe impacting their sleep, their cortisol. The things they have to do to stay that low are not ideal for
a real
handling stress in the real life. Yeah. And so it's, if you want to get down because you're going on a beach vacation, I realize you're going to bounce back. You're spending a week at the beach. Great. You want to diet down a little bit. Great. Is that necessary for health? Not at all. And is it sustainable for most people? No. And so it's, I don't want to perpetuate unrealistic health objectives. I like looking at blood work. I like looking, like fasting insulin levels and hormone levels and pairing that with what you're doing in your lifestyle, how you're feeling, and helping people tie those things together, tie biomarkers to their lifestyle and think about longevity and think about their long-term health and avoiding metabolic disease. And that's where I try to get people to focus more on that rather than just the aesthetics of
the nice looking body, but not really, kind of not rotten, but not optimal inside. Let me ask you, after 40 and in 50, I mean, you mentioned you're 50 in that photo. We'll put that photo up. Again, you look like a prime tier Baywatch guy in that photo. But how important is it, like a heart monitor at this age? And getting blood work, you mentioned, like, is that something you really recommend for someone over 40, over 50? Know your
Absolutely.
blood constantly, get a heart monitor.
Yeah, blood work is something I ask all my clients for.
Okay.
I mean, it's like, go to your doc. Here's the things he's not going to add probably. So I want you to tell him to add these markers, because sometimes the doctors are not trained too well on what to look for metabolic health, or certain markers they just aren't looking at because they can't necessarily treat those with a medication or procedure. But when you're talking about prevention, they're very important to have your eyes on, so you see something coming before you need an intervention. You know, so that's where I'm trying to help people advocate for their own health, right? I'm not trying to be their doctor, but I'm going to help them communicate with their doctor and understand how to manage their own health on a level where they feel confident about what they're looking at. So yeah, there's certain biomarkers I like to see. Focus on metabolic health and hormone health, and then with a heart rate monitor. If someone, especially if someone is prone to maybe over exercising, which there are those people out there just pounding the pavement, and it might be kind of taking a toll on them. But I think it can be beneficial when you're trying to target that lower end of the heart rate. I really encourage people to what's called polarizing cardio. So a very little bit at the very high end, like what you might call a sprint, where you might go on all out effort for 10, 20, 30 seconds, maybe at most a minute. Could be on an assault bike, a rower, could be out sprinting on the grass. Yeah. But a little bit of that, like it might be once a week or every 10 days, or for some people will aggressively, maybe twice a week. But then spend most of the time that lower end that I mentioned before, that zone 1, zone 2. So staying below that zone 2 level really builds up what our energy, the energy powerhouses of our cells, which is the mitochondria. And so building up the mitochondrial density in our muscle cells, and building that cardio base where it's going to help us just burning fat all the time throughout our day, and have a healthy cardiovascular system, because it's more of a low, slow, take some time with it. But that doesn't have to be going on the walk or the jog. It could be having fun. It could be the mobility routine. It could be your Pilates workout, or playing pickleball or tennis with some friends, or soccer with your kids at the park. It could be, play is very important because it makes us move, but it's not drudgery, right?
It makes us enjoy it. It's not a chore. And I think a lot of people, I think what I see all the time with friends and just everybody, including myself at times, where it feels like a chore, you want to do it less and you don't enjoy it. And I think that's, to your point, adding kind of a playful dynamic really makes it a routine, and as and brings you back to that youth, right. So I agree with you on that. So it sounds to me, Zane, that you want to be at a heart rate of that zone 1, 2 level to get kind of the heart flowing, the blood flowing, burn some of that fat off. And then you want to add in kind of almost like a fighter training where they're at a certain heart rate, and then all of a sudden there's a spike in kind of like an assault bike or a sprint, where you peak and then you come back down to levels of, again, a consistent burning. So that is something that I'm writing down and taking note on, because it's important. What kind of workout plans do you, and obviously it's all different for your different types of clients and genders and so forth. But what's a typical workout plan that you like to recommend for someone starting back in their 40s or 50s? Are they coming in slow? Like, what's the process someone should do, whether they work with you or at home even, to try to get back into the game, so to speak?
Well, if you're just coming back to it, definitely take it easy the first 2 or 3 weeks. In other words, move through the exercises, but don't try to push close to a point of total fatigue or failure with each exercise, because you're just going to be unnecessarily sore. Let your body get used to it. Let your nervous system get used to firing again. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks, you can usually ramp it back up a little bit. But with specific to strength training, I really am finding I do less volume now than I ever have, and I'm getting great benefits from it. So shorter, full body workouts, or at most like a upper body, lower body split. So like upper body one day, lower body the next, and then a break. And then you might do that twice a week, or with a full body workout, you can do that sometimes 3 times a week with rests in between, at least 40 hours rest in between each one, but very low volume. So maybe somewhere between 10 and 15 total working sets. You might have some warm-up sets in there, but 10 or 15 sets hitting the full body, that's all of your working sets. So, and working close to failure. In other words, that last set, where you're really struggling to finish it, stop 1 or 2 reps before that. So you're just shy. And usually you can feel it coming, because even though you're working with full exertion, you'll notice those last 4 or 5 reps start slowing down involuntarily. And those are very important reps. It's creating what's called mechanical tension. And that's when you're really stimulating the muscle to add protein to those muscle cells. And so you're getting in that space where you have right before failure, where it's slowing down involuntarily, but you don't have to go all the way to failure and incur all that extra inflammation that comes. So it's finding the sweet spot between stimulation without a lot of extra inflammation, like a minimal effective dose to stimulate the muscle growth and strength increase without a lot of wear and tear or time it takes to recover. And, these routines where we see these big splits of 3 to 5 day splits, where people working out 5 days a week, they're doing different muscles. Those came in the 1950s after steroids came into the bodybuilding scene. But before that, in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, the bodybuilders that they would recruit for like the Hercules movies or the Superman movies, those guys were doing full body workouts 3 days a week.
Oh, wow.
And it was, and they do a set, and then they'd rest. And they do a set, and then they'd rest. And it was like, maybe they'd have 3 or 4 pushing exercises, 3 or 4 pulling exercises, and 3 or 4 leg exercises.
Well, people back then were so much more in shape, and I feel like it was almost like natural strength. Even in high school, you've seen these old videos where kids are like, doing pull-ups now. I don't think anyone, you pick like out of 10 kids, they're not going to be able to do a pull-up. Maybe 1 or 2 will, Right. It's changed.
They were more active, more outside, they were, and they weren't distracted. I mean, we have all these other distractions now. We have devices and things that are taking us away from movement, but definitely. I mean, even in the 80s, I think when I was in high school, it was like, we all climb a rope up to the ceiling in high school. And it was like, good luck getting some kids to do that now.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine a teacher? I don't even think they have it, but can you imagine in high school they would put out a rope and tell kids to climb? I think
that was 20 feet up, 20 or 30 feet up.
Yeah, back then, right? It was. I've seen them.
Yeah, we did. I did it. I remember, in the 80s. It was great. Now it'd be a liability. Now you'd have parents screaming and protesting.
Outside on Mother's Day, they'd be protesting. I've seen on Mother's Day here. You're from the Bay, and we should note that, or around the Bay Area, Fresno. You mentioned you grew up Bulldogs over there, and out here they had a protest on Mother's Day against Elon Musk, and there was a bunch of moms, and I'm like, why are the moms protesting on Mother's Day? Why not be with their family or something? Irrelevant.
You're supposed to be at brunch.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be at brunch right now.
Enjoying life. What are you doing at a Tesla dealership? I hate going to a dealership anyway. Why would you do that on Mother's Day? Right now, I guess in the gym, if we were to ask 10 kids to climb a rope that's 20 feet high, the gym teacher would be fired or something like this, Crazy.
Well, see if the gym teacher can do it. I mean, for that matter. We've gone to extremes where we have still some extreme fitness now, and then we have extremely unfit. But the middle is like it's almost disappeared.
It's like
whereas, like you said, you go back several decades, even to the videos, pictures, I should say, of people on the beach or Venice Beach back in the 70s.
Oh yeah,
nobody's jacked. But they're all roller skating. They're thin. Everybody's lean. It's it was a different paradigm for us. And, we've lost that. And I think it's a direct correlation to our diet for a large part, and there's a lack of general outdoor activity. I mean, we just don't go outside as much, but I definitely think it stems from our diet.
Yeah. And diet and the phone distraction. My God, that like keeps people inside, kids inside. I try to not allow our kids to use it that much and remind them that, hey, fresh air is more important.
Sunshine.
Yeah. Sunshine's great. And it's interesting. I saw or read an article how in hospitals they used to have sun decks, at the top of the hospital or on the roof, I should say, and people would get vitamin D naturally. Now they don't have it. You're kind of inside and kids are inside, and it's not good. It's not good at all. Let me ask you a question that I've debated with my 40, 50 plus friends. Okay. You mentioned you do less low volume or less maybe strenuous type weightlifting potentially. Do you do heavier weights, or are you doing just a normal, like whatever you can manage to not overstrain yourself, and higher reps? Or what's the strategy when you're getting 40 into your 40s, 50s? Are you pushing, are you squatting heavier? Are you squatting less? Are you curling heavier or less? And does it depend, I guess, what you're building for? But overall, for a general dad out there, should he be doing heavier weights or less to not hurt himself?
Well, I mean, if they're just getting back into it, then give yourself some grace and get your body adjust. But if you're consistent, I mean, I personally, now I've been lifting since I was 18. So I've been lifting for 37 years.
Oh, wow.
But so I'm very comfortable in the gym and I have a home gym. I use a variety of things, bands, body weight, weights. But my ideal rep range is usually somewhere between 5 and 9 reps. And that's going up to within 1 or 2 reps of failure, 1 or 2 reps short of failure. So because I think the high rep sets actually cause more inflammation. It's hard. It takes longer for that inflammation to recover from that and to be ready to train again. And so I try to go for more bang for my buck, right? So it's going to stimulate the muscle fibers I'm after, which is those high threshold, the muscle fibers that are better for handling high end of strength, size, and so forth. And I'm not because I'm trying to get bigger, but I want to hang on to those muscle fibers. And I'm only doing 12, 14 sets in a workout. And so that one set for that movement I'm doing, I want it to count.
Yeah. You want it to be impactful.
I want it to be impactful. Right. And I want to make sure I'm not quitting because, my heart rate or is burning, or because my heart, rate was high and I just, the oxygen was low, whatever, cardiovascular wise, because if you start going to high rep sets, sometimes you're fatiguing because, like for squatting, your blood pressure is going up, your heart rate's pounding, there's a lack of oxygen. I want to fatigue because those muscle fibers were actually fatiguing in that level. Mechanical tension there. And so I'm making the most of it with heavier sets. But I don't think doing I want to see what my PR is. I want to see what my 1 rep or 2 rep max is. I think you're asking for an injury there without a whole lot of benefit, unless it's something that's very safe. But I wouldn't personally, like something like a squat where you're going to bar on your back, or a bench press, something where you have a risk of injury. I'm not doing the super heavy 1, 2, 3 rep sets that are on the heaviest end of it. It's just, I don't see a great deal of benefit from that.
I see. It sounds to me like you're recommending challenging yourself with safety in mind. So, maybe if you're used to curling 20, try to go up to 25, 30 or something like that. And you're not going to do 45 where it's maybe a waste or, unless you build up to it or whatever.
Yeah, you can work your way slowly, make progression, and then realize at some point with certain movements, you're going to hit a top end, and that's okay, because the whole point is to build muscle and hang on to strength. And so if you reach a point where hey, I'm happy with right where I am with the size, that's fine. That's fine. Maintain it. Do enough to maintain it. It doesn't take as much, and focus on another area of your fitness, whether that's your mobility, cardio, whatever it is. but understand that, you're not competing with anyone else. You're competing against age, right?
Time.
And you're trying to preserve your youth as long as possible. And that's a very important part of it. And I think competition can be fun, but find ways that aren't going to put you at risk of so much, injury or cause you to overtrain. I think that's one of the biggest things with guys. The people who are exercising are probably more at risk of overtraining because they're trying to follow a workout that's for a 30-year-old bodybuilder, as opposed to let's just challenge the muscle and move on. And I think that's where we need to think. Again, it's that smarter, not harder kind of approach.
You're an advocate for low carb, intermittent fasting. Is that correct? You think does it benefit you, or is it different per each person and so forth?
I think those are good strategies for. So I've used those a lot with clients. I started recommending low carb for my clients back in 2002 for weight loss, and then I followed it myself. I've done a lot of intermittent fasting. I think you can overdo them. I think there's a time and place for them. I think people who are trying to lose weight or reverse some insulin resistance, those are great tools to kind of get things back under control. If you think about dietary strategy and exercise as tools, then intermittent fasting and very low carb dieting are like chainsaws, where you can really cut away and you make big progress, but they're kind of sloppy. And when you get into where you're just like, okay, I've turned my health around, I've changed my eating habits. Now I've dropped the majority of the weight, but now I want to fine tune or optimize. Now it may be time for a chisel instead of a chainsaw. And so you don't need so much of a harsh approach. Now, some people might find they thrive low carb, and that's great. They're great where they are. But I don't know that's for everyone to optimize. And so I've personally overdone it with low carb intermittent fasting in my late 40s, to the point where I was doing way too, compared to my workout and the level of insulin sensitivity. So basically, I was pretty low body fat already. It caused me to overtrain because I was underfed. And so we can push any strategy too far. And so I think it's great for people who are trying to turn their health habits around. Maybe it's a good way to cut some hunger or to give yourself some boundaries in how you're eating and what you're eating. The big thing is eat whole food. And I just try to encourage people, whether they're eating low carb or they're intermittent fasting, avoid processed food, and you're way ahead. Your body's going to start noticing a difference right away. You know what I mean? But too often it's like, oh, it's low carb. It's got low carb marked on the package. Well, your first warning sign should be it's in a package. So if we're eating whole cuts of meat, fruit, veggies, even things that are, if it's a potato, it's a whole potato, right? Those things didn't bring us disease, right? Metabolic disease is something that just happened in the 20th century. We didn't really have this before the 1900s. We didn't have the obesity rate in 1901 was 1%. Even in the 1930s, type 2 diabetes only affected 1/3% of the population. Wow. So 0.3% just 100 years ago. And heart disease was almost unheard of. So this is something we've created during the 20th century. Yeah, the industrial. It came from man-made food. Because in the 1800s, we weren't eating man-made food. We were eating food you'd find from a farm or from local, right? And historically, we haven't had this pandemic of metabolic disease until the 20th century. So what did we eat before that? Well, we ate all these whole foods, and we ate a variety of them, and we ate them in different ratios. Now, estimated 65% of the American diet is made up of ultra-processed food, which is processed oils, so the seed oils that become part of the conversation, the public conversation now finally. But seed oils, processed, highly processed grains, and processed sugar combined into making processed foods. Those are usually the three main ingredients. And so all of these processed foods are creating a certain level of oxidative stress in our bodies that our antioxidants in our bodies can't handle. It's overwhelming them, and that turns into various forms of metabolic disease. So insulin resistance when it's affecting the mitochondria, or heart disease when we have visceral fat building up around our organs. Both those, type 2 diabetes stemming from the insulin resistance, and obesity. And so these are results of oxidative stress caused by oxidative foods that are either oxidizing as soon as they make them, and then we eat them, and it's even more oxidative stress because they have no antioxidants with them, unlike a whole food, which has built-in antioxidants and is safer from oxidation in its whole food form, in the food matrix. And so we've created highly oxidative foods, and we're replacing our whole foods with these processed oxidative foods, which creates the free radicals. If you've heard of free radicals, and oxidative stress, which creates inflammation, and that's the beginning of disease. And so it's not a particular macronutrient that's causing disease. So we've eaten all the macronutrients, and if you go to indigenous tribes, they're eating all the macronutrients, whatever's available in their environment. But we have created these processed foods that are causing disease, and now we're exporting them. We've exported them to Asia and India and Australia and South America, and now we're spreading our disease that we've created all over the world.
It's crazy. It's almost unavoidable in some regard, it's avoidable, but it's become difficult to stay on track, and they're making
it's pervasive.
Yeah. And here's the thing. It's like, I try to eat healthy, and I'm sure you do too, but then you go out to the restaurants or you go out somewhere, and the food that they're cooking with is processed, a lot of it, and the oils they're using, and it's almost out of control. And then to your point, you combine these processed foods with lack of exercise, and you're really going into disaster state for the future.
Absolutely.
And I think it's unfair. If you, a lot of debate is like vegetarians or red meat, or, you eat fish only, et cetera. What's your take on that for someone? And, are you a person that recommends to kind of balance everything out? As you mentioned earlier, tribes eat whatever they can. Do you eat meat? Do you not? Like what's a good kind of habit for eating, and at your age?
Yeah, no, I eat all types of meat. So I mentioned earlier, when I was in my 20s, I was a vegetarian for about 3.5, 4 years. I actually lost a lot of muscle mass, and I got to the point where and I tried to do it right. I was eating beans and rice every day. They didn't have almond milk in the stores back in the 90s. So I was making my own almond milk. I was eating nuts for all the whole food. I was trying to do a whole food vegetarian diet. I lost about 15 to 20 pounds of muscle.
Oh, wow.
I was pretty lean to start. Yeah, and then my immune system got to the point where I picked up a virus, and my doc said, your immune system is a little low. It might be your vegetarian diet. And I didn't want to hear that at the time, because I was really working hard at doing it well. I was cooking. I was making all my own food. And when I added in a little bit of, basically I added in whey protein, some salmon, and some eggs. And it was like within 2 weeks, lights came on. Upstairs, I started feeling better. I was recovering. I felt like I was getting my strength back. I actually forgot to drink coffee for a few days. I was so I had enough energy, I didn't even think about it.
Wow.
And so I knew I was missing that. So that was my clue in that experiment didn't work. And I tried my best. But so I'm a big advocate for meat.
Mm-hmm.
I actually hosted a documentary that's coming out in just about a month or so, looking at the role of meat in the human diet. So I'm a big fan of meat, but there's many people who go all meat, and they're anti-carb or so I'm not anti-carb at all. I think if you're healthy, you're insulin sensitive, you can eat a variety of types of foods as long as they're whole foods. So sourcing matters for sure. I think we do a really good job at industrializing our food sources in this country, and that's not great. I mean, I think ideally, if you could source it from a farmer or from a rancher, you're gonna be a lot better off than going through the industrial model of food processing, whether it's the meat or the veggies and the fruit. It's like you go right to the source. You shake your farmer's hand, you shake your rancher's hand, and you're gonna be much better off in that food. But I'm not saying that's necessary for staying healthy. But I do think we can eat a balance of food just by avoiding processed food and then finding your own balance. I think there's nuance there, and there's room for variety. And I wouldn't want to say, this is the only way to eat, bam, and set that down for all people. Because it is based on their current health, their activity goals, their personal health goals, and where they are, in their life, in their age. As we get older, it is harder to process, to digest certain proteins, and so maybe we need eat a little bit more protein, animal protein, to stimulate muscle, because it is harder to digest. We don't digest as much of it, but I don't ever want to demonize a particular food group or macronutrient, because again, historically, we've eaten them all without disease.
Yeah.
And so I'm not one to, it took me a long time to learn that the hard way, to be honest. But again, varying those for a particular need, like wherever they are in their health journey, can be beneficial as a strategy for that time period.
So it sounds like a balanced diet is essential in some aspects. But I will tell you, Zane, I've met some angry vegetarians. I don't know if it's because they were hungry from lack of protein or
maybe some B12 upstairs. Some B12 can make you a little grumpy if you don't have enough B12, which is really an animal-based.
Possibly B12 as well. The Bay Area, they have these vegetarian restaurants and.
Oh yeah.
So they're really big out here on it. And I'm not saying it's bad or good, again, to each their own, but it's funny. I love meat. I love to have all types of food. I think just what I'm gathering is, if it has more than like 3 ingredients or something like this, then you kind of should be questioning, an egg's an egg, as long as it's organic. Fish is fish. Right. And these are all.
If it comes in a box, a bag, or a bottle, you better be paying attention to how much of it you're eating and what's inside it. You know what I mean? You just
makes sense.
Read the label.
Do you? I recommend, or I do it. Have you scanned stuff when you buy it? Like if you ever go to a store, there's an app called 𝐒𝐢𝐬. You scan it, it tells you like, oh, there's 10 hazardous chemicals. You probably don't want to put this inside your body.
I haven't done a lot of that. That's interesting. I've forgotten that was actually out there. I don't use a lot of other, additives to my food. I kind of know I stick with a lot of the same cooking, like whether if we use coconut oil or certain olive oil, we kind of like we've kind of made sure it passed the bar, so to speak. I have scanned it with our olive oil, looking for all natural, like because so many olive oils are bastardized with like cheaper oils, and that's a big thing. And so looking for a good quality olive oil, we stick with it. Look for a good quality seasonings and stuff like that, we stick with it. And so, but it is important to understand that there are foods out there that are marked to look healthy, that have things in them that you don't necessarily want. But it's just called marketing.
It's funny, as you're cooking with olive oil and you pay a premium for it nowadays, and you're like, oh, I'm cooking healthy, but it's a processed olive oil and you don't have no clue about it, and the bottle looks great or whatever with a few words. So that's very interesting. I actually read an article about it where someone was, saying don't buy this Costco olive oil. It's not as, quality as they make it seem like it is. And now I, started questioning that as well. Let's talk a little bit about why you wanted to write a book, Kicking Ass After 50. What kind of inspired that, and how long did it take you to finish it? And what is the point you wanted to push across with your book?
The point was I'm with my co-author, Dr. Ken Berry. We were I was just turning 50 when he mentioned the idea to me. And we wanted to help that middle-aged guy who's basically let his health go. So that is really like a safety net. Or a life preserver to the guy who has let himself go. He's put his career first, maybe he's put his family first, but he's put his own health at the back of the line. And he's wondering, his basically all he wants to do is sit on the couch, right? His energy's gone, his motivation's gone. And we wanted to give him an easy to read, short guide, because we know what men are. Just give it to me straight, right? And give me the short version. And so it's really a bit of a guide as to, with a little bit of why you want to avoid these things, why you want to focus here, but that you don't have to be a victim to your current state of health. You can do something about it. And because you've applied in your life discipline to other areas of your life, to your career, to your family, it's like, apply this same level of discipline to your health. Here's a little bit of knowledge. Here's what you can look for in your blood work. Here are the foods you can focus on. Here's some movement ideas, some exercise ideas to get you going and to make some big strides right away. Here's the tools. Now put them to work in your own life for your own health, so you can continue charging forward in your career into your 50s and 60s and be there for your family and for your the passions, the things that you wanted to do at this point in your life. You don't have to be sidelined because of your health. That was the motivation.
I like that. I like that. And funny enough, a lot of people do slip into that, I would say, darkness of self-health. And what they don't realize that if you're healthier at that age, you're a better father, a better husband, and so you're just mentally better. Let me ask you about your own health, like cheat meals. Do you do cheat meals where you'll, go out with your kids or your family and get some ice cream and,
Sure.
Is that, it's not a big deal.
I don't really consider it a cheat meal. I mean, I am so intentional about how I live and how I eat that it's an intentional divergence is what I will call it. It's not something I would have on a daily basis, but I've learned to enjoy life and the moments that are there and realize that small amount, whatever I'm doing, is not impactful compared to everything else I'm doing because I'm in a healthy state. And I won't, like, you're not going to see me diving into a bunch of French fries because I know what they're cooked in. And when I eat something that's cooked in some of those oils, my stomach lights up. Like, it's on fire for 3 or 4 hours. So there's a certain element of pain there that I just will intentionally avoid. And there's no gratification. There's no enjoyment in those things. It's something that slips past me. But if I'm especially on vacation or I'm traveling with my kids, I mean, 3 of our kids are in their 20s. Oh, wow. So we don't see them that much anymore. So when we get together, it's a thing. And so it's a rare occurrence to have us all together, but it's, and special. And so it's being in that sense of family, community, where you're all enjoying a moment. And I can usually enjoy the moment and avoid the things I know are like going to be causing me pain at the same time, and just be there and be present. And so it's really, again, I don't go out. I've been good all week. I'm going to go out and grab some pizza and a beer and blah, blah. That doesn't even, that's not an appeal to me. Like, I don't have those kinds of cravings anymore. If it's harmful or if it's something I'm going to feel later, I don't usually have any desire for it. If there's, and usually by the time I get back from vacation, I am so ready to get back on my eating and routine because I just feel better.
It sounds like your routine is so strong that if you have to go out and eat, you're just like, hey, whatever, I'm enjoying the time and I know what I'm capable of kind of getting back into the swing of things once you're
exactly. Yeah. It doesn't throw me off.
Yeah. It doesn't
throw me off from in terms of my habits. It's not going to throw off my habits. My habits are locked in because I feel better when I eat this way. I used to, like, for instance, alcohol when I in 30s, 40s, I'd have, something on a weekly basis. And then it got in my late 40s, like, hey, this is affecting my sleep. So then it became maybe once every 2 or 3 months, I might have a little alcohol. Now it's like, I might have a drink 2 or 3 times a year.
Oh, wow. As I got older, alcohol became kind of a...
Yeah, as I got older, I noticed that alcohol was impacting my sleep quite a bit. And so I started cutting back. Once was maybe I have something every 2 or 3 months. And then it became now to where maybe it's just a holiday thing. It's just something when the family's together, I have a glass of wine or two. It's like Christmas. It's when we finally all together for a dinner. But it's like 2 or 3 times a year, maybe a special occasion with somebody, but it's not a regular part of my life. And I, at the point where the benefits from not having it are outweighing any other enjoyment I might have from it. Wow. And so it's not, and it may sound like I don't indulge at all and I'm just no fun, but there's just other things I have that I enjoy my diet or enjoy that are purely for enjoyment, and I don't have the downside with them. So you go to a risk to benefit ratio.
So you go to a pasta place with your wife for dinner, you don't have a glass of wine anymore, or is it kind of like
it doesn't really appeal to me, to be honest. Wow. It's like I'll get the meatballs, you know what I mean, or I might have the pecan, but I'm not.
You don't crave it.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. No, or I might have she says, "Oh, this is a really good one," and I'll have a sip of it. Yeah. Thanks. And I don't get religious about it. I don't get like I'm scared of the alcohol.
You just don't want it.
I just don't want it. It's a nice taste. I give it back. I'm good. I tasted it. Move on. I don't want the impact on like my sleep.
There's no benefit to it. And here's the thing. I see that the younger generation, even more so, are cutting back on alcohol big time. I think it's the lowest consumption in like 100 years is what we're seeing. Mocktails are becoming more popular, even though they're full of sugar. I don't like those either. But, alcohol is kind of like that thing where, like, do I really want to feel different or have a waste of sleep? It makes no sense. And
it impacts your psyche for a while as well. But or even just the next day, if you have, it's really hard to have one or two and not three. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I noticed that when I was, younger. So
in the Fresno days, you would have a little more than you needed.
Oh yeah, plenty. Okay.
What about as we kind of wrap up here, stress management? I think it's essential, and it's kind of relates to exercise and good eating habits. What do you recommend for your clients for stress management, especially with now? The fast-paced world that we live in, kids in college, this and that.
Right. So sleep is crucial. We got to stop punting. Through the 80s and 90s, it was like cool to punt sleep or say, hey, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Or, it's that whole grind thing. And that's probably one of the worst things you can do for your health. Sleep is crucial for your future neurodegenerative diseases. It's a high risk factor if you're limiting sleep. And in the present, it only takes about 4 or 5 days of sleep, less than 5 hours a night of sleep, to start having an impact on your metabolic hormones like insulin and blood sugar and cravings and stuff. So it has an impact immediately, as well as just mental performance. So sleep is important. So prioritize your sleep with honoring your bedtime, right? Don't stay up on the Netflix when it starts restarting that series. It's like, nope, stop, go to bed. Not eating too close to bedtime too. Well, so within at least 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed, don't eat. It'll improve the quality of sleep. I know a lot of people track their sleep. I track mine to see sleep quality, and those things can really have an impact. But for a lot of us, as we get busier, as we get older, sometimes it's harder to get to sleep. It takes a little more time to, land the plane. And so many people will come home and like we talked about alcohol, they'll have that drink to calm them down. So they say they can get to sleep. And so we do need to maybe allow a little more time to land the plane, to calm our bodies down. If that is if it's a sauna, if it's some sort of nasal breathing routine, something that you listen to or you read or you do something that doesn't stimulate you, right? Avoid working meals so that your body can get back into a sympathetic or parasympathetic state. We spend so much time, especially in the current kind of modern life, we're in a sympathetic state, the fight or flight or the get things done state, so much, so many more hours in the day than we would have even 100 years ago. And it's impacting our health and our sleep. And we have to stimulate the parasympathetic. So the move towards more people doing yoga or even yin yoga, for instance, which is really about stimulating the parasympathetic, box breathing, nasal breathing, spending time in sauna, all those things help stimulate the parasympathetic. But it doesn't have to be too much of a ritual. It's just more of an exercise. It can just be something that is non-work related, that doesn't upset you, that just allows you to calm the nervous system and calm your mind and bring things down. That is essential for our longevity, to be honest. And that is managing stress, managing fatigue, is honoring the parasympathetic and stimulating the parasympathetic, because that's when we heal. That's when we recover. That's when our brain reorganizes thoughts and memories and goes through its learning patterns as we sleep to learn from what we've done before in our dreams and so forth. It's like, that's where things get reset. And so we have neglected that. And I think it would almost get cultural to neglect that. And
so it sounds like, if you're not sleeping enough, you're kind of deteriorating your mind and body. And before, everybody was like, I'm going to power through it. And that's not a good idea when you get older. You mentioned alcohol's kind of, you're having a tough day. You come home, you're like, I'm going to have that drink, right? And then it leads to 2 or 3. Then you're not getting a good night's sleep. So you're further kind of putting yourself in a negative situation. And it's counterproductive. What about, you mentioned earlier in the podcast, coffee at 40, 50. Have you cut coffee off? Because I personally have not, but a lot of people I know talk about the downside of it being kind of reliant on it, almost like a drink, but just in the morning,
Yeah, I that's one of those I allow because I enjoy it and I enjoy it, but I do limit it how late in the day I drink it, so give it, because it does have quite a long half-life in our system, the caffeine does. And so I try to limit it, by like 1 or so, like stop drinking the coffee. 1 or 2, you want to cut it off, or maybe it's like half a cup that afternoon and 1 in the morning. But I mean, it's, I think you can have it. So different people have different levels of sensitivity to caffeine. Some people are super sensitive to caffeine. A cup of coffee would give them the jitters. Obviously, it's not a good idea for them. We're not all of the same sensitivity to that. And life is there. I mean, I try to help my clients with excelling in their life, and there's always give and take there. And sometimes it's, they're pushing the envelope, right? We all kind of, if you own a business, you have something that you're doing, you're always charging forward. You're pushing the envelope. Your goal is to balance your risk to benefit ratio. And so if it doesn't cause too much risk, or if you can manage it and limit the risk while still getting some of the benefit from it, then I think it can work for you. If you're having it and it's disturbing your sleep, then it's how do we minimize it? But I think most people can handle 1 to 2 cups a day, and it doesn't appear to be harmful in any other way other than if it disrupts your sleep. And so, if you want to avoid mold, get some mold-free coffee, right? You want to avoid glyphosate, get some organic. You can look for the higher quality coffees. But the coffee itself, I think, is something that's very individualized. You can manage it, limit when you have it and how much you have it. And like many things, a little can be helpful, and too much can cause more risks than benefit.
Not good. What about, a lot of people that I've spoke with that are older, vitamins always come up in conversation. What's your take on vitamins, supplements? Like, you're getting older, you may be losing certain type of creatine or even testosterone, or you might not be or you might be vitamin deficient, I should say. What's your take on vitamins? How essential is it, to continue that route, or do you not take them and get them naturally?
No, it's really hard to get them all naturally. Like most of us are magnesium deficient if we just relied on our diet. And so I think some level of magnesium supplementation is beneficial for everyone. Magnesium glycinate in the evening can actually help with relaxing the body and getting a better night's sleep. Most of us are D3 or vitamin D deficient. We don't get enough sun. We're inside a lot. And the 2 things you need for vitamin D are cholesterol and sunshine in your skin. And so if someone's eating less meat, maybe they have a little less cholesterol production. But the thing is, I think a D3 or even a D3K2 supplement combo is great to bring our D3 up. It's such a vital nutrient, which we've learned over the last 5 or 6 years for our immune system, that keeping that D3 up, or the vitamin D up, is very important. As far as you mentioned testosterone hormone replacement as we get older, I think keep an eye on those hormones with your blood work. 40 at the latest, start looking to get a baseline. And the majority of my clients are between 40 and 65, right? So they're hitting that point where in the late 40s to 50s, hormones are diminishing or disappearing. And so hormone replacement, bioidentical hormone replacement, is essential, in my opinion, for an optimal level of living. Now, can you be healthy and live without them? Yes. But as I said, my clients are really kind of like pushing the envelope. They want to optimize their health. They want to get as much benefit as possible while limiting risks. And I think there's a lot of, we're seeing more and more that hormone replacement can actually greatly reduce the risk for women, osteoporosis, heart disease, neurodegenerative disorders. For men, same thing with heart disease, insulin resistance or metabolic disease across the board, and neurodegenerative diseases as well, like dementia and so forth. Because it does reduce inflammation, it keeps, with women, the bones healthy. As they lose estrogen, that creates the heart disease risk, which actually starts to pass that of men over 50. And testosterone is just great for, muscle retention, libido, quality of life, brain fog. Your brain just works better. And so they're, as far as I'm concerned, they're ideal. They're a great way to optimize health, not to replace your nutrition, your exercise, or good sleep habits, but to layer on top of them, like integrative strategies, well managed, on top of good habits, to really magnify the benefits of those good lifestyle habits.
I see. Yeah. Good to know. And appreciate that. Definitely, I think what I've learned is blood work is essential in knowing your levels, and having someone to review it other than just a doctor is key, because a doctor is going to, like you mentioned earlier in the podcast, try to prescribe something to fix it. They get incentive to do so. Let's talk about, I've seen, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, you and Men's Health magazine. Who was your kind of go-to bodybuilder figure when you were growing up? Like if you looked at a poster, or you were like, this is who I strive to be, like a mentor, so to speak, in this space of health. Did you have one, or?
I really didn't. It kind of came late to me. So, I started lifting and thinking about my health in my late teens and 20s, so college and older. And I never really wanted to be a bodybuilder per se. There were some great athletes then that I thought, so I would see, like, I'd watch the Olympics and I'd see like the water polo players, or the volleyball players, or the guys who are a little more, like solid, lean, but very agile, agile and strong. And so I was kind of a big, like, look at the Olympics to see the sprinters and some of the track and field guys, which were so impressive, so it wasn't maybe a particular athlete, but it was like the Olympics were something I always made time to watch. And I would compare how the different sports and trainings would impact the physique, or the physique that seemed to pair up with a particular sport. And so that's where my head was, a little more on the analytical side. But it was, looking at these very agile, lean, fast athletes.
By the way, I'll say water polo is probably one of the most stamina-driven sports that I can imagine. It's, first of all, you're swimming, you're trying to be above water, you got to hold your breath at certain points, you're like almost fighting in the water.
And it's a fight. It's a fight. You're getting kicked underwater, you're getting dragged back, you're getting pushed down. There's, when you're taking a stroke and that elbow will come across to a face, you're fighting. It's quite there's a lot happening underwater that people don't see. And you're supposed to be treading the whole time, right? Yeah. Treading or swimming.
I could barely tread now. And I got to tell you, we had there's a college kid that got a scholarship in our jiu-jitsu gym, and he's a water polo guy. And I had to roll with him for 10 minutes. I thought that I was going to die, because there was no, there's no like quit, or there's no stamina deficiency in his routine. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it. And anyone that says they've done water polo, from that moment on, I go, oh my God, this is serious. So,
yeah. And some of those guys are pretty big. Like college and Olympic level water polo players, they're not skinny. Like they're big.
They're lean, strong, and every single muscle group almost is on point. It's like it's chiseled away. Yeah. All right. As a final question, if you could go back in time give your younger self a piece of advice, what would that be?
Ooh, it would be around overtraining. It'd be like, hey, be careful if you're doing more than you need. It was be careful with overtraining and don't fear a particular food group, right?
I love it.
It would be like, it's the processed food. It's the processed food. Just skip to the chase. It's the processed food.
The processed food is what the enemy is. It sounds like it's not being a vegetarian or loving meat or whatever. Don't eat processed food.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. If you can do that, you're gonna be way ahead of 90% of the population.
Love it. Love it. There you have it, folks. Zane Griggs, he has shared some golden nuggets on this podcast. Incredible shape, looks great at his age. For his age, I should say. You could check him out on Instagram. We'll link you below, Zane. And we truly appreciate you coming on the podcast. Anyone's interested, they'll reach out as well. Thank you for coming on, Zane.
Thank you, Simon. I appreciate it.